Hi guys, it's Danae and welcome back to my channel, and today I'm gonna be finishing up volume 8 of ErHa, and I'm nervous. I have tissues here with me because I don't trust meat bun, and yeah, I feel like there's a discussion that I'm probably gonna be having at the end of this volume regarding expectations going into the novel versus expectations for where we're at, because I've been having this feeling for quite a while now and I didn't really know how to voice it, and I think I finally put my finger on what my true issue is. So yeah, we're gonna be doing that at the end of this live stream. Well, not live stream, pre-recorded what usually should be a live stream read along. So also hopefully by the end of this I'll be able to tell you guys whether or not I can continue the rest of the ErHa volumes as live streams, or if we're stuck doing pre-filmed reactions to these indefinitely. But on the plus side, once this is done, I'm going to be doing, going back to live streaming for Disabled Tyrant's Beloved Pet Fish, the final volume. We're taking a break from ErHa for that. And then I'm between doing a volume of Mordu first, silent reading, or doing the next volume for ErHa, because I really want to finish up ErHa in a timely manner. Birds. But yeah, just I might put a poll up for what we do after Disabled Tyrant's Beloved Pet Fish. So yeah, anyway, I hope you guys will enjoy. I'm so scared we're about to enter a rape scene for Chuaning, and I don't know how one can be mentally prepared for that. So yeah, without further ado, let's just get into it. Okay, for anyone who wants to follow along, we were on page 281, chapter 267, Golden Dragon Jade Pillar. I have no idea what that could possibly mean. Shimei pressed a sacred healing pole between Chuaning's lips, then sank his fine burned fingers into his inky dark hair like 10 devilish white snakes. Lifting Chuaning's head, he pressed their foreheads together. Butterfly dreams haunt your slumber each night. Quietly, he began to recite the incantation, but fell silent. Almost at once. He had intended to erase some of Chuaning's memories. This was one of his best honed skills, which he'd previously used on Moran. But perhaps Chuaning's souls were too much disarray. Why am I skipping words just off the bat? My bad. But perhaps Chuaning's souls were in too much disarray. It was entirely ineffectual. Thank frickin' goodness. I would be crying if he could manipulate Chuaning like that. This might be rather difficult, Shimei sighed. He closed his eyes, then opened them once more, his sultry gaze now emitting a bewitching glow. He stared fixedly at Chuaning, then recited the incantation once more. Butterfly dreams haunt your slumber each night, the past swept away, the present lost in misty mountains. This time it worked. I spoke too soon. But not perfectly. His spell fell like a boulder into water. There was a splash, but its ripples soon subsided. No matter. A short stretch of time would suffice. When he and Chuaning were in the throes of pleasure together, he didn't want Chuaning's mind to be full of murderous intent. I might be ill. I feel like a pillow is not going to be enough. You guys might laugh. I think I'm gonna need a blanket. I've never needed a blanket in my life for these kinds of stress situations, but we're gonna like try that today. That wouldn't suit his taste at all. Too bad I don't really care what suits his taste at the moment. Shizun, you've been asleep for so long. Isn't it time you wake up? The murmured words had the force of a spell. Chuaning's eyes fluttered open. Shmei's enchantment had done its work. His mind was fogged and stuck in the past life. His awareness reverted to the days shortly after Shmei had passed away. Moran's grief from back then had wounded him so deeply he unconsciously yearned to change the past. His mind naturally drifted back to that period of time. But a person's souls were an intricate thing. Souls from both lifetimes were crowded in Chuaning's body. Despite Shmei's spell, he wasn't quite lucid. His eyes were glassy, as if caught in a waking dream, and his memories were in disarray. He seemed to drift between wakefulness and sleep. Shmingjing? Shmei's voice was gentle, a tenderness that hid all his twisted desires. It's me. Chuaning seemed exhausted. The fever had drained him. He made a soft noise of acknowledgement, then closed his eyes once more. Shmei knew he was adjusting. He waited, unhurried by his side. I just wonder how his math is working out, considering in no lifetime ever has Chuaning had any sexual desires for Shmei, to put it very bluntly. There has never been an inkling of interest from what we've seen. After some time, he heard Chuaning sigh, eyes still closed. I must have been dreaming. I'm so glad you're still alive. You're not going to be for much longer. His mind was stuck in a time after the heavenly rift. Shmei knew, but he hadn't expected such sorrow from Chuaning. Shmei felt a rare pang. You couldn't bear to see me dead? You're so young and so well loved, murmured Chuaning. It shouldn't have been you. I'm sorry. Shmei gazed at him quietly. I wish it could have been me. Then no one would grieve, at least. The ache in Shmei's chest intensified, throbbing through his deadened heart. He remembered this feeling. He had felt it the first time he and Chuaning had walked home together, sharing an umbrella. In the following years, he'd schemed for ages in secret. Those around him either died or drifted away. He had hidden himself in darkness, pretending to be a heartless boulder. I mean, if you pretend long enough, is there much of a difference? Eventually, he convinced himself he'd become stone. It was not until this moment that, after so long, he vividly sensed the existence of his heart. It throbbed, it melted, it ached, it itched. He knew he shouldn't feel these emotions. Acid rain would corrode even stone, and soft moss would cause him to crumble. I mean, if you can't feel these emotions, then what is the point of feeling affection for Chuaning? Or is it that you want to desire him, but you don't want any of the intricacies that come with this desire? You only want the negative emotions? That seems quite sad. Not that I am deigning to feel pity for him. He can go suck a brick. But yeah, anyway. But he couldn't help grabbing Chuaning's hand, heart pounding. Shmei opened his mouth, swallowing around his dry throat before he asked, Then what about you? If I died, would you grieve? Did you grieve? Chuaning's sharp eyes were half-lidded. Beneath his long and dense lashes, those eyes held too much. Shmei stared into them hungrily, hoping to find some identifiable, concrete feeling within. But there was none. Just as how water left alone remained water, and grain left untouched remained grain, only when kept in isolation would a singular emotion stay the way it was. But human emotions never arose in isolation. Shmei's death had caused Chuaning heartache, pain, self-reproach, and regret. All those emotions churned together like water stormed with grain, a brew that had long fermented into something else entirely. Shizun, Shmei asked with a single-minded fixation, if you could do it all over again, would you do for me what you did for him? Would you sacrifice your own life to save mine? I mean, he didn't. Silence. Would you? Chuaning's eyes were blank and dull. Shmingjing. These 3 syllables were all he managed before his lips were brutally sealed. Shmei had awaited this answer so long, but when the moment of truth finally arrived, he dared not hear it, didn't want to hear it. He knew what Chuaning would say, Shmei thought. Resentment ricocheted through his heart. He kissed the man on the bed like a punishment. And there we go, the first assault. Chuaning was too stunned to understand what was happening until Shmei attempted to pry open his mouth with his tongue. Comprehension hit like a dream shattering, and Chuaning's eyes flew open. Shh, quiet, Shmei panted, tapping Chuaning's throat to magically muffle his voice. You know, like, far be it for me to compare 2 horrible people. But at least Moran had the guts to fully, like, hear and face the horror that he was putting upon Chuaning. He didn't do all of these things to pretend that what he was doing to Chuaning was somehow consensual. You taught us the spell. You said it would help us stay silent in dangerous situations. Did you imagine there'd come a day I'd use it for this? I can safely say he never thought you would stoop to this level. He didn't stop to take in the confusion and fury in Chuaning's eyes. His jealousy and hunger had pushed him past the bounds of rationality. Did you know, Shizun? It had been 2 lifetimes. I've worked so hard, so carefully. I've never had a single day of peace. That's your fault, you know, like, sorry to break it to you, but you could have had a nice life. He paused to tie Chuaning's wrists and ankles to the bed. I'm not a normal person, he said through gritted teeth. Considering what I have to do, I'm not allowed to be a normal person. But what does that matter? Even a puppet like Emperor Tashin Jun can do as he likes. Why should I be the only one to deny myself? I know we're just gonna have to bear with his justifications, but like, that doesn't make it easier. Shmei gazed at Chuaning, struggling furiously beneath him, pain and satisfaction filling his heart. Now I understand. Whether in good times or bad, one must enjoy life to the fullest, Shizun. He bent over Chuaning, yanking Chuaning's clothes aside with desperate haste. It cost me so much to get here. It didn't cost you a freaking thing. It cost everyone around you everything. Let's not confuse the two. I might have to speed read through this just so I don't stop and comment every 2 seconds, and also so I don't overthink it too much. Because I'm getting so angry already. This is not going well. Shouldn't it be my turn to taste you? Think of it as a reward for your disciple, Chuaning couldn't summon the strength to fight back. Shmei stripped off his robes with ease, bathed in the chill air and the haze of the lanterns. The lean, muscular lines of his body were mottled with purple bruises Moran had left behind. Thanks for that reminder. We're just stacking pillows at this point. Shmei's eyes darkened. Right now, he murmured. Shmei's eyes darkened. Really now, he murmured. He did go a bit overboard. He reached out and grasped Chuaning's chin, gazing into his phoenix eyes. Chuaning's gaze seemed veiled by mist. He was still trapped between dreams and reality, sensing that this was too absurd to be real, yet too vivid to be fake. Combined with the chaos wrought by 2 lifetimes of memories flooding his mind, he couldn't respond. He and I are different. Shmei stared at Chuaning. His eyes softened, but within that softness was a hint of something darker. He doesn't know how to make it good for you. That's your metric? That's your metric for different. You didn't maybe want to be different in the sense of, oh, I'm not gonna force you. That could be a great difference between the two of you. But no, you decided that for some arbitrary reason, being raped by one man is better than being raped by another. Like, what? Once you've tried me, you'll think no more of him. Sorry, I'm laughing because this is absurd. This man is absurd. He began to undress. He just bathed and was wearing only the bathrobe. It slithered quietly to the ground to expose a body as exquisite as fine jade. I don't like the wording here that is indicating towards the chapter. Shizun, he whispered, draping his weight over Chuaning. Whether it was dream or reality, Chuaning could no longer contain his revulsion. He trembled from head to toe, face ashen. You're so warm. Shmei knew the man beneath him would burst into furious castigations if he lifted the silencing spell, yet he couldn't resist caressing him as he breathed. Will you be even hotter inside? I might puke. Shi-Ming-Jing. Shmei blinked in surprise. You broke the spell yourself? He lifted his eyes to stare into Chuaning's. Oh, you really are. Chuaning's throat spasmed as he coughed up a mouthful of blood. How dare you? He rasped. There's a curse word there that I will not say because I don't like to, but just know the meaning is very necessary, okay? Away from me. Shmei fell silent, gazing down at the man beneath him. He really was too vicious, too stubborn, too unwilling to accept his fate and admit defeat. Damn it. There was so much Shmei wanted to say, but none of it passed through his lips. In the end, he just smiled. As Chuaning drew a breath to snap at him again, Shmei clapped a hand over his mouth. Working quickly, he pulled out his own hair ribbon and tied it in between Chuaning's teeth. Since you can break the spell, I'll have to use this instead. Sorry, Shizun. The sight of those dazed or wrathful, humiliated eyes inflamed Shmei. He bent to whisper in Chuaning's ear, Remember now, you have to stay quiet no matter how good I make you feel. Oh. Ooh. Can we just, cast him into hell already? Is that an option? Is there a ritual? I'd be willing to sacrifice this book. Not much else, but yeah, this book I could throw in there for you. Your revered emperor is just on the other side of the door. If he hears you begging for me like a... How dare you use that word? How dare? Do you think he'll be pleased? Shmei dragged his fingertips lower, drawing circles around every blue-black mark. When his touch drifted further down, Chuaning felt like he'd been skewered by humiliation. His memories were a mess, and his awareness was stuck in the past life before he discovered Moran had fallen victim to a mysterious spell. In this state, he hated Moran, but he hated his own shameless heart more. Despite his humiliation, his hatred, and his painful disappointment in Moweyu, he couldn't help a thrill of pleasure when Moran held him. When Moran panted in his ear, when sweat dripped from Moran's torso onto his bare skin. There were even a few instances during the most frenzied of their entanglements when he had sensed his own secret craving for Moran to never stop, to tear him apart, to pierce his soul through. Those tempestuous thrusts had given him an illusion of peace. When he lay wrapped in Moran's arms, he'd sometimes feel as if none of those terrible things had ever happened, as if this man who intertwined unceasingly with him might have loved him too. You know, like, somehow with Meatbun, it's like, oh, I think this thing is bad. I think we're in a bad situation. And then she just takes a bag of salt and pours it into the wound. Okay. But it wasn't the same with Shimei. He didn't know how he'd fallen into such a strange and vivid nightmare, but when Shimei laid his hands on him, he felt only fury and disgust. His stomach roiled at his touch. He didn't like it in the least. Shimei's body differed from the one in Chuaning's memories. He was taller and stronger, yet still fair, with fine features, the lines of his muscle as smooth and elegant as if hewn from frosty jade. Sorry, I'm not sure I pronounced that correctly. The scent on his skin was likewise clear and fragrant. It was nothing like the brute power Chuaning was used to. Moran's body was all he knew. Moran's skin might have been pale, but hot blood surged beneath with a terrifying wildness. He radiated a pure masculinity like the blazing sun, capable of scorching the hearts of those it touched, even though it sometimes smelled like blood, like iron, a hard, cold smell. His sturdy chest pulsed with warmth. Chuaning's eyes snapped open. He twisted his wrists in the bindings, red welts blooming over his skin. Even the ends of his eyes were twin scarlet streaks of humiliation, but fighting was no use, and the thick furs spread on the bed would muffle any sound. You know, there's like, you can make a sound in the back of your throat that doesn't require you really opening your mouth, and it's a horrifying, piercing sound. But it could be effective and very necessary in this moment, I would say. I understand that more like Tashi Jin is not a good option, but honestly, right now it's the better one. The only thing is, I don't know if Chuaning's pride and like fear would allow him to take that gamble. Shimei watched him with a distant interest as he struggled like a trapped beast. Why does Shizun waste his energy fighting? He asked with an amused quirk of his lips. Don't you believe I'll make you feel good? He lifted one of Chuaning's strong and slender legs, fitting his own hips between his thighs. If I could remove myself from this situation and still carry on reading, I would. His eyes darkened, ready to claim Chuaning as he'd dreamed 1,000 times before. Chuaning squeezed his eyes shut. He'd already bitten his lips bloody, and his nails were buried deep into his palms. Oh no, why did you... No, I did not need to see a visualization of this. I did not need this. I don't think there's something I could want less right now. And his body would pull taut, but not before because he feared the pain of intrusion. Rather, what he felt was unbearable shame. Whether this was real or an illusion, it was far too humiliating. I hate this for him. Okay, we're gonna look at the image together. Be mentally prepared, guys. I can't start crying right now because then I'm not gonna stop and this is gonna become unbearable. So you're gonna look at it. I'm gonna spend like 2 seconds and then we're gonna power through. If it was an illusion, he was ashamed of himself for dreaming it up. If it was real, he was ashamed of being so incompetent that 2 of his 3 disciples harbored such disgraceful intentions towards him. Look, this is not your fault. Don't you dare think this is your fault. He had always been the type to find fault in himself first. If it were just Moran besotted, his desires might have been his own problem. But both Shimei and Moran, Chuaning couldn't help wondering if he'd done something wrong or inappropriate, if he'd failed to live up to the role of a teacher. For 2 of his disciples to develop such base urges, where did he go wrong? To suffer so? He waited in tense silence, yet even after some moments, there was no movement from Shimei. Chuaning slowly opened his eyes, dark brown pupils flitting up to Shimei, somehow frozen where he was. No hint of lasciviousness remained in his expression. Instead, he looked almost comically aghast. Puzzled, Chuaning's gaze drifted downward, whereupon he saw something that's truly how do you pronounce that? Begaried belief. I'm assuming it means something to the extent of like it begged to be explained, or like it's I don't know, but we're just going. What was that? That central atmosphere vanished without a trace. Chuaning felt as if he'd been struck by lightning. Shimei's exposed member was gold. It was so absurd. Chuaning turned his head to keep from giving himself a headache looking at it. But after a few beats, he considered how strange this was. What kind of person had a gold? You know, if you'd asked me where this chapter was going, I could think for years. I could think until I turned 90, and I would not come up with Shimei having a golden penis. Like, what? Okay. Blanching, he forced himself to take another glance, facing the sides head on. This time, he got a good look. It wasn't that Shimei had loins of glittering gold, but rather that a little golden dragon had emerged at some point and coiled itself around Shimei's shaft. Okay. Is that the fire dragon thing that Shimei summoned long ago? Or is there some other strangeness afoot? It was wrapped very tightly, with its head stretching out and out, staring at Shimming Jing in furious silence. The message was clear. It would crush the anatomy in its coils to a pulp should Shimei make any rash moves. I don't know who blessed us with this golden dragon, but thank you. Chuaning blinked. Shimei stared mutely. The demon dragon bared its teeth as its unlucky victim and opened its tiny jaws in a shrill roar. If not for his bound wrists, Chuaning would have put his head in his hands. He seriously couldn't bear to look. At long last, Shimei spat, "What the hell is this?" The answer came in the form of the stone doors rumbling open, revealing Tai Shinjin's countenance of displeasure. Not as dumb as you thought he was, is he? He strode through the doors with his arms folded over his chest, eyes sweeping over the shining golden dragon coiled around its jade pillar. Not the jade pillar. Oh. Ridicule joined the threat in his voice as his thin lips parted in icy comment. Miss, please get off the bed. Furious with humiliation, Shimei didn't immediately take his meaning. Miss, he snarled, who are you talking to? Oh, my bad. Ta Xinjun squinted in scrutiny at the appendage within the dragon's quill. It's Mr. after all. You're so small this venerable one couldn't tell at first. Ow! I mean, I don't want to say he deserves that, but I'm not, like, feeling too sorry for him, let's be honest. This is so ridiculous, but, like, I'm kind of relieved. I shouldn't be, because heaven knows what Ta Xinjun will do to Chuaning. But, like, right now, one crisis is averted, so I'm celebrating. That golden dragon's whiskers twitched as it bared its teeth to echo its master. Rah! Sorry for my bad intonations here. It was perhaps the greatest insult you could give a man. Shimei's vaunted composure wasn't sufficient to keep his face from flushing or the cords in his neck from protruding in rage. Even worse, he was fully undressed and tied up by a miniature dragon, no less. In this state, no display of anger would make him imposing, so he chose silence. Oh, goodness. Emperor Ta Xinjun strode into the room, coming to a stop before the bed. Leaning against the bedpost, he pushed his chin out. Huabinan, did you think this venerable one wouldn't know what you were up to as long as you made no noise? He narrowed his eyes, scorn in every line of his handsome face. You do think this venerable one is 3 years old? Huh. Okay. I am pleasantly surprised. I didn't think that a chapter that was set up to be so harrowing could take such a ridiculously hilarious turn at the last second. And what can I say? I love dragons. Yes, that was great. Thank you for that. We still have a ways to go. We still have quite a few pages, but wow. And, like, not to sound ridiculous, but this kind of gives me hope a little bit, because all we've seen so far, really, has been Shimei besting Moran and Chuaning at every single turn. So, as ridiculous as... Sorry, I shouldn't have overthought the middle of that word, but, like, as crazy as this turn of events is, it gives me hope, because it's like, okay, so Ta Xinjun can outwit Shimei in very unexpected ways. It's a small moment of establishment that maybe there's hope. Maybe things aren't as clear-cut as Shimei has been making everything seem up until this point, as the books have been making it seem, and it shows that Shimei can't 100% predict Moran the way he thinks. He is underestimating him in moments. So I am taking it as symbolic of there being hope. I don't know if this ridiculous scene was meant to be symbolic of that, but we're just taking hope where we can get it, okay? That was insane. That was so insane. Okay, I don't know how I continue reading after that, but sure. I'm just glad that book didn't end on that, because I would not put it past Meat Bun to end on something as insane as that. Okay, we are on page 293, chapter 268. Return to Wushan. With a gesture from Ta Xinjun, the little dragon tightened its coils. Shimei paled, visibly pained, but his pride wouldn't allow him to drop his facade of calm. Moran, you dare spy on me? Ta Xinjun burst into laughter. You jest. Tell me, what doesn't this venerable one dare to do? Fair point. Shimei glowered. A quick introduction. This fine fellow is a vessel of the demon dragon of Mount Zhao, Wang Li. Oh, he fully went and pulled out the demon dragon of Mount Zhao and miniaturized it, it seems. It only obeys the commands of the Nangong clan. Ta Xinjun cast him a sly glance. To show such presumption with this venerable one's things, you were doing so well. In this venerable one's own territory, you must have really grown sick of living. A vein pulsed at Shimei's temple, betraying what was certainly apoplectic rage. Apocalyptic rage wouldn't necessarily be too far off either. He'd never imagined the blood oath with Mount Zhao could be used in this fashion. And he was well and truly caught. He didn't dare push Ta Xinjun, so he could only retort, "Take this foul thing away." Ta Xinjun stared openly at the object the dragon was coiled around before scoffing. Then you better make sure you never take that disgusting thing of yours out again. Already enraged by this interruption, Shimei rumbled darkly, "Who are you calling disgusting?" "Whoever's tied up." I mean, Chuaning's also tied up, so maybe don't say that. Glancing at the bound Chuaning, Ta Xinjun frowned and tried again. "Whoever's naked." "Sir, I think your brain needs more oxygen. I know it's hard when you're dead, but Chuaning is also naked." Chuaning was still staring. Having stepped in it twice already, Ta Xinjun waved his hand. "This venerable one doesn't mean you." There we go, you tried. "Moran, you're ridiculous," Shimei proclaimed. Despite his words, he pulled his robe back on, then looked at Moran again. "Now, will you release it? There's no hurry. Leave this room and walk away. Once you reach the back hills, it'll release you on its own." Ta Xinjun said smugly, "But let this venerable one leave you with one reminder. If you ever think of touching this venerable one's property again, it already knows your scent. Even if you're beyond the bounds of Mount Zhao, it will find you and choke you to death." Having no inhibitions made one unstoppable, and Ta Xinjun's inhibitions could be counted in the negative. That's a very true statement. Shimei stormed out in a rage, leaving the Emperor and the Baidu immortal alone in the room. Ta Xinjun walked over to Chuaning and raised a hand, yet he saw that Chuaning's eyes, filled with sharp enmity, also shimmered with tears. Chuaning flinched away, no doubt reminded of Ta Xinjun's violence during those long years as his prisoner. Ta Xinjun sighed inwardly as he brought his hand to Chuaning's forehead. Even he wasn't sure where the wisp of softness had come from. "Not so warm anymore," he said expressionlessly. "He might be useless, but his medicines are effective." After a pause, he continued in cold tones. "I won't let that brute humiliate you again. No one is allowed to touch what belongs to this venerable one. You don't need to worry." He had no clue Shimei had erased Chuaning's memories temporarily, returning him to the past life, and was thus oblivious to the shock that coursed through Chuaning at these words. Moran had called Shimei a brute. Ta Xinjun didn't notice Chuaning's expression. In fact, he'd avoided looking directly at Chuaning this entire time. He knew himself too well. If he looked too long at the sight before him, he'd lose control. There was no way Chuaning could endure any more rough handling in his current state. In the past, he might not have cared, but he had been so lonely in that other world for so very long. Unable to commit to either life or death, he was forced into the liminal existence as an incomplete revenant. Seeing Chuaning again seemed to have awakened some indistinct warmth in his frozen heart. He wasn't as rash as he used to be. Well, thank goodness for that. Ta Xinjun untied Chuaning. Upon seeing the red welts on his wrists, he began to unconsciously massage the skin there, then quickly stopped when he realized what he was doing. He really didn't know what was wrong with him. The minutes dripped by. Shimei's spell began to weaken, and Chuaning's gaze again grew misty and unfocused. But even amidst the chaotic tangle of his thoughts, he pushed through the pain to speak through bloodless lips. Moran, he's back. Whether it was dream or reality was no longer important. All that mattered was that Moran's long-held wishes had finally come true. So, he rasped, "Don't feel hatred anymore." Oh. Oh, crap. I did not think that was where he was gonna go with that. Oh, that hurts. Ta Xinjun stared at him. Perhaps because he thought the dream was about to end, Chuaning closed his eyes and extended a hand, chafed raw, to caress Ta Xinjun's face. Turn back. Something seemed to collapse in Ta Xinjun's heart. He stared at Chuaning, unblinking, confusion obscuring his features like a faint haze of clouds. Chuaning furrowed his brow, voice rough with tears. "There's no way forward. Turn back. Stop heading down that path." He cupped Ta Xinjun's face in his palm. 2 lifetimes had left them both in ruins. The Baidu immortal, his awareness flickering between 2 lifetimes, gazed at the corpse of Empress? Imagine the rage if Ta Xinjun found out I just called him Empress. Emperor Ta Xinjun. "Moran," he rasped. "Why is your face so cold?" "It's cold as ice. If I could, I'd be the candle waiting at the fork in your winter road. I'd burn my entire life up to light your way home. Why are you so cold?" No, that's cruel. "I don't know how long I can burn for you. What if my life is exhausted? What if I burn out? What if my flame is extinguished, but you're still walking into the darkness, refusing to turn back? What would I do then?" Chuaning's fingers trembled. He closed his eyes. He'd ever been solitary in life, without friends or kin, and he didn't fear death. But what if he'd burned through all his remaining warmth, yet failed to thaw Moran's frozen heart? The idea roused an annoying guilt. What if his flame were to go out, and that youth wanted to turn over a new leaf after, only to find himself unable to retrace his steps? Oh, that feels so close to what actually happened in the previous timeline. The thought of it made him yearn to live on, even for just one more day. Maybe tomorrow the ice would melt, and that man would turn around, walking out of the endless darkness into the light. Okay, we're gonna have to speed this up because I have someone coming in about 20 minutes, and we need to finish this ASAP. Okay, after the damage done by Shimei's spell and the turbulence of gaining 2 lifetimes worth of memories, Chuaning spent the majority of the following days asleep. When he briefly woke, his mind was muddled and his sense of reality was scattered and incomplete. Once Ta Xinjun understood the reason behind it, he found Chuaning's confusion saved him a good deal of trouble. Chuaning was bewildered and easily placated. If Ta Xinjun was too harsh one day, it was likely Chuaning wouldn't remember any of it the next time he opened his eyes. I don't like that. Because his memories were such a jumble, Chuaning always thought he was dreaming and thus let down his guard much more often. A cat that scratched was interesting in its own way, but a big white cat snoozing in a soft, sweet ball was a rare sight indeed. He had to give it to Hua Binan. It was well done. A villain is still a villain. Every day, Ta Xinjun asked Chuaning the same question first thing in the morning. What do you remember today? And every day, Chuaning would frown and ask, What? Are your memories still stuck after our wedding in the past life? Ta Xinjun would reply with uncharacteristic patience, or are they at some other time now? At this point, Chuaning would probably say curtly, with a look of displeasure, Mo Wei, what nonsense are you speaking now? In the past life, Ta Xinjun would have slapped him for his impudence. Now Ta Xinjun also raised a hand, but his movement slowed as he approached Chuaning's face, and his other hand followed. It didn't look like a slap at all. Rather, he seemed to be cupping the other man's cheeks. He chuckled, satisfaction gleaming in his eyes. Perfect. It'd be a waste if we could keep you like this. I am not looking forward to the next volume because it feels like it's going to be a lot of pain after patience from Ta Xinjun. He didn't want Chuaning to remember what had happened in his current life or to remember the Mo Wei who'd become a Zongshi. If Chuaning stayed in this state of befuddlement, it would be as though they had returned to Wushan Palace. There we go with the title. They could still spend their days and nights intertwined, no matter how much Chuaning hated him. His Shizun, his Wanning, would again be his and his alone. Jealous of your own damn self, mocked Hua Binan. You're pettier than a woman. Jealous, thought Ta Xinjun. Impossible. Anyone would grow accustomed to something that was around all the time, even if it was a dog or some random object. That was all. That's why you set a golden dragon upon Shimei's nether regions, because you're totally not jealous. On one particularly sunny day on Mount Zhao, Ta Xinjun hauled Chuaning outside to sit with him beneath the flowering tangerine tree. He lifted his eyes to those little white flowers dotting the branches and sighed lazily. Too bad they're not more fragrant. If only it was high tongue. Chuaning still thought he was asleep. How are you so picky even in dreams? Ta Xinjun rolled over on the grass, then shifted to rest his head on Chuaning's knee. They looked at each other, and Ta Xinjun spoke. This venerable one's always been like this. By the way, this venerable one is hungry. When we go back, make a bowl of congee for me. Egg drop pork congee. But the egg can't be overcooked, and the porridge shouldn't be too thick. A little bit of pork will suffice. You know how to make it, right? This venerable one's taught you how many times? Chuaning had no intention of complying, but between Ta Xinjun's hauling him bodily towards the kitchen and his unceasing verbal cajoling, he was left with no other choice. Eventually, he followed Ta Xinjun into the ancestral hall. The fire in the kitchen was readied, the rice was washed, and the water was warmed up. Ta Xinjun sat at the little table, chin resting on his hand as he watched Chuaning work at the stove, stewing in helpless irritation. Thankfully, Chuaning thought this was a dream and hadn't put too much effort into his resistance. As for Ta Xinjun, he knew this illusion would soon shatter, and so cherished it all the more. The pot came to a boil, and the aroma of rice and meat wafted up from beneath the wooden lid. Jin folded his fingers beneath his chin. There was much he wanted to say to Chuaning, but there was no real point in voicing it. Nothing would change if he did. In the end, his lips parted, but the only word that came out was an indolent "Oi." Huh? What was he going to say? Jin didn't know. After some thought, he said solemnly, "Remember to add salt." I did. Then remember to taste it. I feel like him tasting it is gonna maybe be the thing that breaks the dream, because it's like, oh, wait, I can taste this? Chuaning stared at him. There was a glint of relaxed mischief in Jin's eyes, so dark they looked purple. Don't think of poisoning this venerable one with salt. He came up behind Chuaning and glanced down into the pot. Without warning, he folded the man's warm figure into his arms. He nuzzled at Chuaning's temple, eyes drifting shut. This venerable one still wants to torment you for the rest of your life. What were you? Feeling Chuaning tense in his embrace, Jin held him tighter. He couldn't resist dropping a kiss on the nape of his neck, lashes fluttering. What? This venerable one spent so much time teaching you the art of porridge, yet you won't make this venerable one a single bowl? This coarse logic reduced Chuaning to silence. With great effort, he dredged up some appropriately biting retorts, yet as soon as he tried to speak, his lips were soundly sealed against Jin's own. When he held that flame, once lost and now regained, Jin returned to the warmth of the human world. Amidst the unremarkable sense of domestic life, this dead man walking kissed Chuaning freely and passionately, his freezing lips pressed Chuaning's warm ones. His Shizun, his Wanning, his consort Chu. No one could take him away, and he would never give him up. Jin deepened the kiss, head beginning to spin as he pinned Chuaning against the table. He claimed Chuaning's swollen lips with abandon as his other hand reached up to slide off his clothes. I don't want this. He'd often done things like this in the past. When he was in this kind of mood, he didn't care even if it were urgent petitioners outside. The wildest instance was one in which desire had seized him in the middle of the day, and he had indulged himself with the newly titled Consort Chu right in the council hall of Wushan Palace. We know. We don't want to revisit that memory, thank you very much. Monks from Wubei Temple had come to bring his attention to the matter of the drought demon of the Yellow River, and had constantly begged an audience. In irritation, Jin ordered the veil to be lowered to conceal them from view and allowed the monks inside. Past the gauzy canopy and its tinkling bead veil, he continued ravishing his own Shizun on the lounge of patterned red sandalwood. Keep it down. I told him I summoned Consort Chu to save you some dignity. He panted atop Chuaning. Make any noise and those bold donkeys will know you're the one in my bed. What were you? The eyes of the man beneath him were scarlet with shame. You bastard. Jin snapped his hips harder in response, filth spilling from his lips. Baby, that part of you down there is hot and wet, so why is this part of you up here so... Hold back your moans, that's all. Great, thank you. When those oblivious monks came in, they beheld through the pale yellow gauze a blurry vision of Jin's broad back, accompanied by a pair of willowy legs, weakly splayed and quivering with each of Jin's brutal thrusts. I said I didn't want to revisit this. Those toes were pale and delicate, trembling like dew-laden lilies of the valley. The monks' entreaties dissolved into incoherency, not that Moran absorbed much of it in any way. All he retained was the sight of Chuaning, pushed to his limits yet refusing to make a sound, tears streaming from reddened eyes. his body writhed, bucking at Chuaning as Ta Shizun claimed him to climax. I don't know what else to say, sorry. Body taut in suffering and suppressed pleasure, biting his lip bloody to remain silent. It was too arousing. The instant the monks left, Ta Shizun could no longer restrain himself. Hoisting one of Chuaning's limp legs up on his shoulder, he laid into him viciously from this new angle. Wan-ning, you can let it out now. They're gone. But Chuaning was delirious. His only thought was that he must keep quiet. Ta Shizun leaned forward to capture his bloodied lips, swallowing the taste of copper. They're gone. He flipped Chuaning over, pushing him into the lounge and hammering deep into his slick hole. Without letting up for an instant, Ta Shizun reached around to grope at the smooth, firm planes of Chuaning's lean chest, throat bobbing as he gasped in the midst of fevered desire. "It's good? Gonna come for me?" Great. Damp strands of hair tangled over Chuaning's eyes. Half his handsome face was covered by the mess they'd made over the cushions. Moran's length was simply too big with each thrust. Chuaning felt his belly was going to be pierced through. He panted, lips parting, fingers fisted tight in the cloth. The man behind him increased his pace, almost frenzied, until he finally came, burying himself to the hilt. Moran knew where Chuaning was most sensitive, knew where to aim, so each pulse of his... I'm not gonna say the descriptors. Release would hit right where it would make Chuaning shudder, make his skull prickle, make him squeeze his eyes shut and moan. Even then, Moran was just getting started. It didn't take long for him to harden again. Still buried deep inside the man trapped beneath him, Moran flipped Chuaning over and stared at him, gaze dark through his own tangled hair, his eyes tracing a heated path over the expanse of his skin from his wet and hazy eyes to his bruised and bitten mouth. Lower, lower, until Moran dove down and took one of Chuaning's nipples into his mouth. Exhausted from their love-making, Chuaning let out a startled cry as one of his legs was raised up again, only to choke, gasping for breath, as that scalding heat pressed into him once more. He shook his head and, unable to bear the sound of his own coarse moans, bit down on his own hand. Even then, the sounds of their filthy union couldn't be muffled. The frantic pace of their lovemaking had churned Chuaning's seed within him into a sticky mess between his legs, the brisk slap of flesh on flesh, lurid and wet, shattering the light in his eyes into glittering shards. Great. Let go. Stop biting yourself. Of course, Chuaning ignored him. He kept his teeth firmly set in his wrist, refusing to make any sound. Cursing under his breath, Moran braced himself against the lounge with one hand and grabbed Chuaning's arm with the other, pulling him almost off the couch. "Hold on to me." "What?" Before Chuaning could react, Moran scooped him bodily from the lounge and stood, driving his length deeper as the weight of Chuaning's body sank to meet him. Smiling softly, Moran kissed him again. "You're not so heavy after all." Still holding him, he walked towards the inner hall. But that length was still buried deep inside his Shizun. Whether purposeful or not, in this position, every step made the head of Moran's length, sheathed inside Chuaning, pressed against his most sensitive spot. Every brush against it made his toes grow, yet he still childishly refused to speak or moan. He merely stared, black eyes fierce, at the disciple holding him. "Why are you looking at me like that?" Moran chuckled, coming to a stop and grinding upwards. "You want this?" Chuaning flinched. It was humiliating, but his body had long grown sensitive to Moran's ministrations. Chuaning's brows knit together, gasping softly as his cheeks flushed red. He could vividly feel the wetness dripping from where they were joined. Each of Moran's movements made an increasingly bigger mess of them both. Moran pressed into him like this for a while before growing impatient. He looked, eyes shadowed, towards the back hall he had been making for. Irritated at its distance, he pinned Chuaning down right on the icy floor of the great hall where court was held every morning. He couldn't wait any longer. The wet heat he was buried in felt too good. He shoved Chuaning down onto the stone, driving it into him without mercy. Okay, we're gonna have to pause here because I think I need to go. But thanks to the magic of editing, I will be back soon. Okay, as you can probably tell from the lighting, it's a little bit later in the day, but we're back to finish this. In these wild moments, Chuaning felt as if his soul was leaving his body. Not even he could remain lucid amidst the current of this torrential entanglement. His legs dangled loose around Moran's tight waist, and his body shook with every sharp movement of Moran's hips. There were times when he felt he would die, that Moran wanted to kill him, just like this. Wushan Palace itself seemed to take on a wanton, disheveled appearance. The solemn imperial court was empty save for this pair of naked adversaries. Moran panted raggedly, sweat trickling down the taut lines of his abdomen. He clutched his pleasure-drunk Shizun tightly, driving in quick and hard from below. He heard Chuaning's low and suppressed murmurs and snatches of helpless whines. Warning. He captured Chuaning's parted lips in another feverish kiss. Exertion had left the veins on Moran's neck bulging. His body as searing as his gaze, he nuzzled against Chuaning, the limbs tangling on the floor. Amidst this lingering kiss and his punishing thrusts, Moran pushed Chuaning hard against the stone, covering his mouth and nose with one hand and leaving only those glassy eyes visible. He pumped twice more, then sank to his full depth inside Chuaning, toes going white with strain. I'm going to come. Warning. Here. Chuaning had been driven to the edge of insanity by Moran's monstrous strength and vitality. His hands fell limp to the ice-cold stone. His limbs sprawled, wide inclines around Moran, as his body shook from mingled thrill and torment. Moran huffed, voice hoarse and eyes dark. He grabbed Chuaning's face and turned it towards him. Here? The full head of him was pressed right against the deepest bundle of nerves in Chuaning's body. The merest touch made Chuaning's eyes fly open, revealing the humiliated flush at their corners. He shook beneath Moran, but was held in place by firm hands. Moran breathed roughly into his ear. Stop moving, baby. I'm close. Him calling him by pet names, I just hate it. He groaned when his climax took him. The thick wetness flooded once more into the depths of Chuaning's overstimulated body. Chuaning spasmed, as if struck by lightning, eyes closing in rapture. Warning, does it feel good? Am I making you feel good? At such time, Chuaning could scarcely string two words together. Both scolding and rebuke were absent. His rational mind had fled long ago, his fine legs spread wide, his stomach filled with his own disciples. We're adding back the pillows. Later, they had done such things often, on the great hall's throne, or the stairs, or against the wall. Ta Xinjin's animal ferocity was a tameless, almost destructive force. When consensual, sex like this was all-consuming. Despite the retaliatory and humiliating nature of the acts, it was mind-blowingly good. In the present moment, in the depths of Mount Zhao, Ta Xinjin stared into Chuaning's gaunt face. As he silently recalled those scenes, a perverse curiosity rose in his mind. Had Chuaning ever wondered why Song Chitung had never conceived, despite Moran's prodigious appetites? I mean, now that you mention it, I guess. He'd favored the woman at one point, but never found her quite to his taste. He wanted no children of Song Chitung. Even in the throes of pleasure, he retained enough clarity to restrain himself. He never came inside her, ensuring she would bear no progeny of his. Perhaps as a result of the circumstances of his own birth, he felt that two people, unless they loved each other enough to spend a lifetime together, shouldn't beget any children. Okay, fun fact. You can, a pregnancy can result from pre-cum. Just so you know. Please do not just assume that you can, pull out. Please be safe. Okay? But it was strange. He hated Chuaning so bitterly, yet he often thought that it would be welcome if his consort Chu fell pregnant. From the frequency of his visits, was this his desire to dominate, to retaliate, to take possession? Did he crave this because it would be a punishment even more humiliating than physical disgrace? He didn't know. In his ignorance, he dragged Chuaning down again and again into the abyss of sin and desire. Oh, okay. So I thought, however this chapter ended was going to be the end of the volume. But no. We have another chapter, which means there is potential more pain afoot right before the volume ends. That's great. Page 307, chapter 269, Never Leave Me. Dizzy with lust, Ta Xinjun yanked off Chuaning's belt sash. His robes fell away from his shoulders, revealing the bruises beneath. Ta Xinjun froze. His eyes dark yet searing, like two glowing embers in the ashes. After a stiff pause, he closed his eyes and sighed. Forget it. He would likely break Chuaning in half if he took him again right now. I'll let you off easy today. There was an almost otherworldly silence in the kitchen as he released the man in his arms and refrained from taking any further liberties. Yet Ta Xinjun couldn't resist leaning forward, swallowing hard as he kissed his lover's brows and eyes. I do not like the fact that the word lover was used in this dynamic. Trailing his lips down to the base of his neck, where he sank his teeth into flesh. Only then did he rise, yanking the man he'd shoved against the table up along with him. The congee was ready, bubbling in its pot. Ta Xinjun fixed Chuaning's clothes with a rough hand and cleared his throat, voice still husky and warm. It's ready. Serve me a bowl. His behavior baffled Chuaning, but the emperor's moods were often inscrutable, and Chuaning still thought he was dreaming, so he didn't ponder it deeply. In any case, having a proper meal was much more comfortable than being bent over the table to satisfy Ta Xinjun's lust. Thus, he opted to remain silent as he reached for the wooden ladle. A big bowl. Trying to stuff yourself to death? The ghost of a smile flitted across Ta Xinjun's face. We'll see. He sat down at the table. He had a strong urge to step up to the stove and see what kind of damage Chuaning had done to the congee, but he had to keep up imperial appearances. Ta Xinjun sat with appropriate poise, affecting an expression of refined disinterest. I kind of forgot that Chuaning could not cook except for the wontons. There was something else. Part of me is kind of a little bit relieved that Chuaning is not experiencing this as reality, because I feel like that would weirdly be more traumatizing, like the clashing of Ta Xinjun with the Moran that he knows in this timeline, and like all of the confusion that must be waiting for us, I guess. When the bowl arrived before him on the table, however, Ta Shinjin could no longer maintain his aloofness. It was both overcooked and watery. He didn't need to taste it to know the flavor was certain to be off as well. That terrible familiar flavor that was forever beyond his reach. Oh, he misses it. That's interesting. I just remembered what the actual thing was that I wanted to say earlier. I am worried. We're kind of like in a weird little bubble of, not bliss, but like safety right now. And I don't think Shimei is going to be happy just letting them have their little situationship while he like is being blue-balled over not being able to get access to Chuaning. So that being said, I am very concerned that he's currently concocting a way to either take full control back over Ta Shinjin or just get rid of him. Like speed up the plans enough that he can just off him. Well, redead him. That's not a word. We're just gonna go with it. Also, we have a beautiful image here, so I'm just gonna share it, and I especially love the detailing. I hope you'll be able to see it with the shadows. So you have the two of them, and then you have the shadow of Ta Shinjin there in the background. That's just really beautifully done. And also so sad. Eat, said Chuaning. Ta Shinjin stared at the little bowl for a very long time, stirring it without bringing the spoon to his mouth. Chuaning glanced at him. It'll get cold if you don't eat it soon. Oh, he lifted the spoon to his lips, but after a moment's hesitation, he set it back down. I'm fearing that he won't be able to taste it because he's dead. Chuaning finally seemed to take notice of his strange behavior. What's wrong? Nothing, replied Ta Shinjin. He flashed a grin, devilish and disdainful. It's so bad I don't want it anymore. Chuaning stared at him. It's too stuffy in there. This venerable one is going to get some air. He pushed the bowl away and rose to leave. He was nearly at the door when Chuaning's voice rang out behind him. If you don't eat it, Chuaning said, with a tranquility born of enduring the same humiliation countless times, I'll dump the pots. Oh. That's just giving me like flashbacks to when he was Shazani and that entire situation. Most of what he'd made for Ta Shinjin ended up wasted. It had been the same since that first bowl of wontons was flung to the ground. Ta Shinjin whirled back around. Don't touch it. I mean, he cleared his throat in an attempt to hide his anxiety. Leave it for now. What for? None of your business. Ta Shinjin lifted the door drapes and left the room. When he was safely beneath the eaves, he closed his eyes and heaved a gusty sigh. He was a corpse. No matter how greatly he resembled a living person, he wasn't one. He'd long since lost the ability to eat food. After he'd killed himself at Wushan Palace, he was raised as a revenant by Hanlin the Sage. The sage had subsequently escaped to this world through the rift, but Ta Shinjin had been left in that tattered old universe to carry out his commands for nearly 10 years. In that decade of living as one of the dead, he hadn't eaten a thing. He'd never been a glutton for food, so he'd felt no regret until today, when that dreadful bowl of egg and pork congee was placed before him. Only then did he feel the pang of this loss. Why couldn't he still be alive? He'd waited so many years for this day, for a Chuaning who belonged to him alone. Now he couldn't even eat the congee Chuaning made for him. What did Chuaning's congee taste like? Ta Shinjin stood beneath the eaves with his eyes closed, trying to remember. After a long moment, he jerked up an arm to cover his eyes. No one could see the expression on his face. All that was visible were his pale, pursed lips and the clean lines of his jaw. He lowered his arm and opened red-rimmed eyes. His memory was poor, and he'd never been clever. If he could still taste, perhaps he could have recalled those memories, but his blood had cooled and his tongue was deadened. Even with the bowl of congee right before him, he couldn't remember what it tasted like. Now he'd never know. Thanks, I hate it. Like, why am I feeling sorry for this man? I know why, but I hate it nonetheless. Late that night, Ta Xinjun went to look for Shimei. By the cold pond before the ancestral temple, that peerlessly beautiful man stood with his pale feet bare, splashing in the cold water and sending up glittering droplets of light. Shimei arched a brow at the sight of him. "It's a beautiful day," he said mockingly. "Yet instead of staying in the chamber with Chuzongshi, your Majesty has found the time to seek me out?" Ta Xinjun didn't bother with niceties. "Are you able to make this venerable one alive for a little while?" Shimei looked him up and down. "Your status as a revenant shouldn't affect matters of the bedroom." "That's not what I'm talking about." "Then what are you talking about?" "Eating," Ta Xinjun said stiffly. "This venerable one wishes to eat." Shimei's eyes darkened. "Your Majesty can't possibly want to eat those wontons," he asked thoughtfully. "No one makes wontons as good as my sugar." Shimei smiled. "There is a new one. To think you remember his existence today." "Huh?" Ta Xinjun's recollection of Shimei had been scrambled beyond recognition. Sometimes he had memories of the man, but most times he had no idea who he was. His mention of his sugar today caught Shimei's attention. "Ah, but you spend all your time entangled with Chuaning on Mount Zhao. Don't you ever spare a single thought for your Mingjing Shishong?" So I'm assuming that he doesn't connect Shimei, Shimingjing Shishong, to Hanlin the Sage. Perhaps this was what they meant by together yet strangers still. It took Ta Xinjun a moment to respond. "You said this venerable one's body has too much yin energy, and that I shouldn't go find my sugar before fully reviving with a new spiritual call. He's a water elemental cultivated. This venerable one would hurt him badly." Oh my word. Oh, I didn't even think he was being manipulated in that way. Oh, that's weird. That's so strange. Like, it's so weird that he's being manipulated by Shimei, yet doesn't realize that Shimei, and also doesn't think about the fact that he's actually fully obsessed with Chuaning, you know? Shimei lied without blinking. "Indeed. So, why did you bring up wontons?" Ta Xinjun glared. "Don't you have any tact?" Shimei smiled. "I was just wondering, other than wontons, what food would make the Emperor Ta Xinjun, connoisseur of 1,000 delicacies, crave it so?" Ta Xinjun fell silent. "What, you don't want to say? Then let me guess. Chuzongshi cooked for you." Shimei found his answer in Ta Xinjun's expression. "I heard Chuzongshi of Sesheng Peak is a master in the kitchen," he said with a smile, "capable of cooking the greatest charcoal. How curious that you'd eat it so happily." This last cast a pall, over Ta Xinjun's already grim expression. "Just tell me if you can do it. Stop wasting my time." "Of course there's a way, but I've already told you what it was." Ta Xinjun frowned. "What?" "The same old thing," Shimei said gently. "The sooner we take Mozongshi's spiritual core, the sooner you'll return to life." The spiritual core that he exploded? That I'm assuming you haven't told Ta Xinjun about. The one that you wanted him to explode. Specifically. So, what is the game plan here? I mean, it's not uncommon or unlikely for him to just straight up lie to Ta Xinjun as we see right here. But I just feel like, how confident are you that you're going to be able to keep the destruction of Mo Zongshi's core away from Ta Xinjun, that you're willing to lie like this? A tangerine blossom floated on the surface of the water. Shimei tapped it with his foot, catching the pristine blossom between his toes. Its petals were alabaster pale, yet not even the flower could compare with the fair translucency of Shimei's skin. Shimei looked smilingly down at the little bloom. The sooner we work together to obtain that spiritual core and put it in you, the sooner I'll have access to your full strength, and the sooner you can eat whatever you want. He paused, looking up through soft lashes. Then you can finally see the one you long for. Faced with Ta Xinjun's silence, Shimei concluded, "So I suggest you cooperate, Your Majesty. You asked this venerable one to massacre those cultivators at Guiyi, then made me summon an army of Zhenlong pawns to take down Sisheng Peak. This venerable one did all that. What else do you need from me? Just say it." Shimei rubbed his hands together. "How refreshing. There's really not much more for you to do, save for one last thing." "Tell me." "Come with me to Tianyan Pavilion. The board is set for our final move. It's time to finish things." Only then did Ta Xinjun notice the golden-feathered pigeon perched on the branch behind Shimei, one of the messenger birds used by Tianyan Pavilion. "Tianyan Pavilion contacted you?" "They did." Shimei extended two slender fingers, a thin sheet of paper trapped between. "All good news. Everything's gone according to our plan. It's difficult indeed to play the hero. Mo Zongshi offered up his spiritual core to protect the cultivation realm, but no one's lightened his sentence because of it." He smiled. With a flourish of his fingers, the letter folded itself into a paper butterfly and flew towards Ta Xinjun. "See for yourself." Okay, but you just said that he destroyed his spiritual core. So what do you mean he still has a spiritual core left? Am I dumb? Or is this not computing? Or is there a secret third option that we're just not aware of? Probably that. Probably there's a secret third option that we're just not aware of yet. There's no need. Ta Xinjun caught the butterfly, but didn't unfold it. He stared, dark-eyed, at Shimei. "Just tell me when we start." "The interrogation is in 3 days. Sentencing in another 3. 6 days." Shimei caressed the golden pigeon's wings. His countenance smiled. In a blink, a snake's triangular head darted from his sleeve. The animal sank its fangs into the bird's neck and swallowed the docile bird whole. "Thanks for that." It happened so quickly. Nothing changed in Shimei's face, as if this was all entirely ordinary. He smiled and brushed an errant feather aside. "Exactly. We'll stay another 3 days on Mount Zhao, then go to Tianyan Pavilion to wait." The feather drifted into the water. Ripples spread around it, destroying the reflection of the two men on the shore. "Your spiritual core will make you unstoppable. Everything you want will be in your grasp." Deep in thought, Ta Xinjun returned to the secret chamber. Chuaning was already slumbering. It seemed he'd been reading, but had lapsed into exhausted sleep over the desk, his pristine white robes falling around him like a blanket of fresh snow. Ta Xinjun stood beside him and watched him in silence. One man, one lamp, and one book. He'd seen all the glories the world had to offer, beauties of every color and kind, and scenes of untold splendor. It's only Chuaning. What's there to look at? He asked himself, vexed. Oh, all the regression. I know he didn't technically regress, but we're back to square one, it feels like. But he still swallowed, impelled to lean down and take hold of this man, burying his face into the warm crook of his neck. Chuaning stirred awake. Those phoenix eyes were mild and confused, yet when he remembered the cruelty of Emperor Tashinjin before him, his gaze sharpened and chilled. Tashinjin watched the change, and the dissatisfaction and frustration in his heart multiplied like weeds. He couldn't stop himself from picking Chuaning up. "What madness are you?" The breath went out of Chuaning as he was shoved against the wall. Tashinjin kissed him with passion and despair, lips moving from his neck to his mouth, and from his mouth down to his jaw. Panting, he asked, "Do you love me?" Receiving no reply, he tried again. "Chuaning, do you love me? What are you doing? Why are you—" But Tashinjin didn't seem to want to hear his answer. He simply wanted to ask. He didn't care what the truth might be, or maybe the answer didn't matter. The road was long, and there was no turning back. No answer he could give would change a thing. I thought we just had the entire thing about Chuaning burning himself to help this man turn back, and now he's like, no, there's no turning back. Great. And also this feels too similar for me to the way that Shimei just quieted Chuaning, because he wanted to ask whether or not Chuaning had feelings for him, but he didn't care to know the answer. "If I weren't Emperor Tashinjin, if I became a Zongsha like you, would you choose to be with me? Would you be kinder to me?" He bit down on the nape of Chuaning's neck, lapping at the broken skin as if he would drink his blood, as if this was the only way he could prove that the man in his arms belonged to him, and not to the Morwayu, who was different from him in every way. He lowered his lashes, and his voice went hoarse. "At the end of it all, do you still like the person he is more than the person I am?" "Morwayu, what the hell are you talking about?" Chuaning's memories were a mess. He only remembered the past life, not the present, so of course he couldn't understand his ravings. When are his present memories coming back? Do I even want them to come back? That's the other question. Is there a point to it? Will it somehow balance the scale? This was the only time he could belong to Emperor Tashinjin alone. Tashinjin suddenly felt a terrible sadness. A bitter edge crept into the haughtiness in his voice. He nuzzled his lover, and at last quietly asked, "If I took his spiritual call, would you hate me even more?" There was nothing one could change less than insecurity. Tashinjin held Chuaning tight in his arms. "But you belonged to this venerable one first. Don't betray me." Misery engulfed him. Perhaps a long loneliness would dull even the sharpest blade. "It's been 8 years. Every moment he had you, I waited alone in another world. Alone in Wushan Palace, with no one at his side. Don't leave me again." The first time I at least had the ability to end things myself. "But if you leave me a second time, I can't even choose to die." Tashinjin furrowed his brow. Darkness, madness, heartache, and obsession written in every line of his pale face. "I can't bear it. Not this time." And yet still, he's not reflecting on the fact that he's feeling this way about Chuaning and not Shimei. Okay. So that's the end of Volume 8. And I said at the start of this read-along that I had a thought that I wanted to share regarding how things are going. And I've lost that thought since. It's been an entire day. It was a rough one. Things went wrong. Kind of right, but mostly wrong. I'm gonna try and be coherent. So bear with me. I might correct myself in a pinned comment if I can formulate my words better after I post this. But basically my concern at this point is that I read the time travel, going back, fixing things trope for the relief, the hope of a second chance, the fixing of past mistakes. And also just that essence of people who were thoroughly wronged in the past life getting a second chance at a better future or a better life or just a life at all. And considering considering what might still happen to Shumeng's parents, considering everything that Chuaning has had to go through a second time, because it's all the memories of the previous lifetime plus some new trauma. Fun. Considering all of that, is the time travel worth it then? Like, and I am this close to saying no, unfortunately. Like, it just... There's a book that did a retelling of Aladdin, and it was basically like a dark retelling. Now, I thought it was gonna be like either fully dark, despair, tragedy, or like dark in the sense that it has a dark starting point, but there's like a hopeful end to it, you know? And you see everyone that you care about die except for Jasmine and Aladdin. And that includes like the carpet, that includes, I can't remember Jasmine's tiger's name. That includes Diago, like Jafar's bird. Just everyone. Jasmine's dad. And only Jasmine and Aladdin survived. That is not a happy ending. For me, happiness doesn't begin and end with just my main ship getting out alive of the situation. That's why I don't read dystopia. I'm not a fan. They are not the center of my book universe. I want other people besides them to also do well. I want side characters to also do well. I want them to have a happiness to return to, and I don't believe that one singular person can be your only happiness. So that is me being very cynical, but considering how dark this novel series has gone, I don't think cynicism in this situation is misplaced. And it scares me, because I'm scared we're gonna go there. I'm scared we're only gonna have Chuaning and Moran be left behind in the wreckage of a world that used to be happy but can no longer really be. And it's like, yes, okay, theoretically you can find new happiness, but that's not like, I don't know those characters. I don't know that world. I don't know the theoretical happiness that they could find from new people that they meet along the way. I haven't met those people. I don't care about those theoretical people. I care about the characters that I have followed for 8 volumes, you know? So, yeah, that's legitimately a fear that I have right now. Obviously, still, please don't spoil it for me. We're seeing it through to the end. We've gotten this far. Yeah, I just kind of wanted to explain where my head is at, why I'm feeling a little bit apprehensive and trying to detach myself a little bit because I'm so scared of being disappointed. And yeah, I don't know. I don't know where she's gonna leave us, and I don't know how I'm gonna feel by the end of this. But putting my own personal enjoyments, because this volume was definitely not enjoyable. Like, it was good, but it was not enjoyable. Putting that aside, it was still well written. That I don't doubt. Like, there is not a shadow of me that thinks this was a badly written book, but well written and enjoyable do not necessarily go hand in hand. So, yeah. Anyway, sorry to end that on a little bit of a damper. I think maybe just scroll back a little bit and watch my reaction of Mr. Golden Dragon Dick again. And we'll all have a much happier time. But anyway, I'm looking forward to returning to live streams again for a hopefully much more cheerful book in volume 4 of Disabled Tyrant's Beloved Pet Fish next Monday, if all goes well. I'm hoping. But yeah, hopefully I'll see you then. 再见。